There is a moment that comes to every human being, a moment so quiet, so private, that most people never speak of it aloud. It happened to me on a winter evening in Jerusalem when I was 37 years old. I was standing in my kitchen holding a letter I had received that afternoon. It was nothing dramatic, just a simple notice. But as I read those words, something inside me cracked open. The letter was from a bank informing me that my application for a small loan had been denied. Not a fortune, just enough to cover my daughter's medical expenses for the next few months. And as I stood there, the paper trembling slightly in my hands, I felt something I had not allowed myself to feel in years. Shame. Deep, burning shame. Because I had done everything they tell you to do. I had studied, I had worked, I had prayed with sincerity, I had given to those in need, even when I myself was struggling. And yet, here I was, unable to provide for my own child. That night I walked to my father's house. He was 71 then, and his hands were weathered from decades of work, but his eyes, those eyes, still carried a sharpness that could see through stone. I did not need to say anything. He looked at me, gestured to the chair across from him, and poured 2 glasses of tea. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he spoke, not loudly, almost as if he were telling me a secret. He said there is a force in this world that most people blame on bad luck or poor timing or the unfairness of life. But it is none of those things. It is something far more precise, and it operates according to laws older than any empire, older than any economy, older than money itself. He leaned forward, and then he said something I will never forget. He said the world does not withhold from you because it is cruel. It withholds because you are asking it for the wrong thing. I did not understand him that night. I was too angry, too hurt, too convinced that I was a victim of circumstances beyond my control. But over the years that followed, as I dug deeper into the teachings that had been passed down through my lineage, I began to see what he meant. And when I finally understood it, not just intellectually, but in the very core of my being, everything shifted. Not in weeks, not in months, in days. I am 83 years old now. I have spent more than 60 years studying the Torah, the Talmud, and the hidden layers of wisdom we call Kabbalah. I have counseled men and women from every walk of life, wealthy merchants who were on the edge of ruin, young couples buried in debt, entrepreneurs who could not understand why every venture they touched seemed to collapse. And in almost every single case, the problem was not what they thought it was. The problem was not their strategy. It was not their effort. It was not even their character. The problem was something invisible, something they were doing without realizing it, something that was closing doors before those doors even had a chance to open. Let me take you back to a teaching that has been preserved in our tradition for thousands of years. It is found in the Talmud, in a section that most people skip over because it seems too abstract, too philosophical. But if you understand it, truly understand it, it will change the way you see everything. The sages teach that the world operates on a principle called measure for measure. In Hebrew, we call it midah keneged midah. It means that the universe responds to you in exact proportion to how you engage with it. Not in the way you think you engage with it, in the way you actually engage with it. And here is the part that most people miss. Your engagement is not determined by your actions alone. It is determined by the inner posture from which those actions arise. Let me explain what I mean. Two people can perform the exact same deed. They can give the same amount of charity. They can work the same number of hours. They can pray the same prayers. But one will see their life flourish while the other remains trapped in struggle. Why? Because the inner posture is different. One is acting from fullness. The other is acting from lack. And the universe, which is far more intelligent than we give it credit for, knows the difference. Now I need you to pay very close attention to what I am about to tell you, because this is where the real teaching begins. There is an internal state that almost everyone carries, and it operates like a poison in the bloodstream. Slow, silent, deadly. It does not announce itself. It does not cause immediate pain, but over time, it drains the life force from everything you touch. It corrupts your thoughts. It twists your perception. It creates a barrier between you and the blessings that are already trying to reach you. And the worst part is that it feels justified. It feels reasonable. It feels like you are simply being honest about reality. But you are not being honest. You're being blind. This state is called resentment, not the loud, explosive kind of anger, not the kind of bitterness that people recognize and call out. I'm talking about the quiet kind, the kind that sits in the background of your mind and whispers subtle lies to you all day long. It says things like, they do not deserve what they have. It says, I worked harder than them. Why are they ahead? It says the system is rigged. It says life is unfair. And every time you agree with that whisper, every time you nod along with that voice, you are locking a door that was meant to stay open. Let me tell you a story. When I was 28 years old, I was working as a teacher in a small religious school. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and food. My wife and I were expecting our second child, and I was terrified. I remember walking past a shop one afternoon and seeing a man I had known since childhood. He was younger than me by several years, and he was standing outside his new business, a beautiful storefront in a busy part of the city. I stopped and congratulated him. I smiled. I shook his hand. But inside, something twisted. I went home that night, and I could not sleep. My mind kept returning to the same thought over and over again. Why him? What did he do that I did not do? How is it fair that he gets to build something while I am barely surviving? I did not realize it at the time, but I was planting seeds, dark seeds, seeds of resentment. And those seeds grew quietly in the soil of my heart for months. During that time, everything I touched seemed to crumble. I lost students. I had conflicts with colleagues. Opportunities that seemed promising would fall apart at the last moment. And I could not understand why. I prayed harder. I studied more. I pushed myself to the edge of exhaustion. But nothing changed. Then one evening, my father came to visit. He sat with me at the table, and after a long silence, he asked me a question. He said, "Do you remember the teaching about the evil eye?" I nodded. He continued, "Do you know what the evil eye really is? It is not a curse that someone places on you. It is a curse you place on yourself. When you look at another person's blessing with resentment, you are telling the Creator that you do not trust His distribution. You are saying that he made a mistake. And when you say that, you remove yourself from the flow of his generosity. You step outside the circle of trust. And once you are outside, nothing can reach you. Not because it is not being sent, but because you are no longer positioned to receive it. I sat there stunned because I knew he was right. I had been so focused on what I lacked that I had stopped seeing what I had. I had been so consumed by comparison that I had forgotten gratitude. And that forgetting had created a wall, not between me and money, between me and life itself. That night, I made a decision. I decided to do something that felt almost impossible at the time. I decided to bless the man whose success had triggered my resentment. Not once, but every single day. For 40 days, I would wake up before dawn, and before I did anything else, I would speak a blessing over him. Out loud, I would say, may his business flourish even more. May his family be protected. May he continue to grow in wisdom and in wealth. And I would say, may I receive what is mine in the right time, in the right way, with a heart that is ready. The first few days were excruciating. My words felt hollow. My mind resisted, but I kept going. By the second week, something began to shift. The bitterness started to loosen its grip. By the fourth week, I could think of him without pain. And by the end of the 40 days, something miraculous happened. Not to him, to me. I received a letter from a family I had never met. They had heard about my teaching and wanted to fund a new educational program. The amount they offered was more than I had earned in the previous 3 years combined. But here is what was even more important. I was ready to receive it because I had changed, not my circumstances, me. This is what most people do not understand. Abundance is not something you chase. It is something you become compatible with. And you become compatible with it by removing the internal blocks that repel it. Resentment is one of the strongest repellents that exists. It sends a signal into the invisible dimensions of reality. It says, I am not grateful for what I have. I do not trust the process. I believe in scarcity. And when you send that signal, the universe has no choice but to respond with scarcity, not as punishment, as reflection. You are seeing your own inner state mirrored back to you in physical form. Now, let me show you the mechanism behind this, because it is important that you understand why this works the way it does. The Kabbalists teach that there are 10 channels through which divine energy flows into the world. These channels are called the Sephirot. Each one represents a different quality: wisdom, understanding, kindness, strength, beauty, and so on. When you are aligned with these qualities, the energy flows through you freely. But when you are misaligned, the channels constrict. They do not close completely, but they narrow. And when they narrow, less and less can pass through. Resentment creates misalignment with at least 3 of these channels. It blocks kindness because you are not extending generosity of spirit. It blocks beauty because you are seeing the world through a lens of ugliness and unfairness. And it blocks foundation because you have lost your stability, your trust, your groundedness in the truth of your own portion. Here is what you must do if you want to realign yourself. And I am going to be very specific, because vague advice will not help you. First, you must acknowledge the resentment, not justify it, not explain it away, not pretend it is something else. You must name it clearly. You must say to yourself, and if possible out loud, I am carrying resentment toward this person or this situation. Speak it into the air. Let it become conscious. Second, you must trace it back to its root. Ask yourself, what is the deeper fear beneath this resentment? Almost always you will find that it is not really about the other person. It is about you. It is about a fear that you are not enough, that you will be left behind, that there is not enough to go around, that you missed your chance. Identify that fear. Write it down if you need to. Third, you must replace the resentment with a deliberate act of blessing, not a passive wish. A deliberate, effortful, repeated blessing. Choose someone whose success triggers discomfort in you. It does not have to be hatred. Even mild irritation is enough. And every morning, for at least 21 days, you will speak a blessing over them. You will say, may they be given even more than they have. May their success multiply. May their joy increase. And then you will add, and may I receive my portion with a ready heart, in the right time, through the right means. This practice is not easy. It will feel forced at first. It may even feel dishonest. But you must understand something crucial. You are not doing this to manipulate the universe. You are doing this to reprogram yourself. You are training your soul to operate from abundance instead of scarcity. You are teaching your heart that there is enough, that someone else's gain is not your loss, that the Creator has a unique plan for each person, and comparing plans is like comparing colors. Meaningless. After 21 days, if you have done this sincerely, you will notice a change. Not necessarily in your bank account, though that may come. You will notice a change in your inner atmosphere. You will feel lighter. You will think more clearly. You will see opportunities that were always there, but that you were too clouded to notice. And then, if you continue this practice, if you make it a permanent part of how you engage with the world, you'll begin to see the external changes. Doors will open. People will reach out. Ideas will come. Resources will appear. Not because you forced them, but because you are no longer repelling them. I have seen this happen more times than I can count. I once worked with a woman who was 46 years old. She had been running a small business for over a decade, barely making ends meet. She came to me in desperation, convinced that her industry was dying, that her competitors were corrupt, that the economy was rigged against people like her. I asked her one question: who do you resent? She hesitated. Then she told me about a former partner who had left her business years earlier and had gone on to build something far more successful. She said she had forgiven him, but I could hear the edge in her voice. I asked her to try the practice I just described, to bless him every day for 30 days. She looked at me like I was insane, but she was desperate enough to try. 3 weeks into the practice, she called me. She was crying, not out of sadness, out of relief. She said the weight she had been carrying for years had lifted. And 2 weeks after that, she received a contract offer from a company she had tried to work with for years. They had rejected her twice before. This time, they said yes, and the terms were better than anything she had hoped for. Coincidence, number alignment. Let me give you one more layer to this teaching, because I want you to understand how deep this goes. The Zohar, which is one of the foundational texts of Kabbalah, teaches that every thought you think creates a form in the spiritual realms. A thought of kindness creates a form of light. A thought of resentment creates a form of shadow. These forms do not disappear. They accumulate, and over time, they create an atmosphere around you. Some people walk into a room and you feel warmth. Others walk in and you feel tension. That is not personality. That is the accumulated atmosphere of their inner life. When you carry resentment, you are surrounded by shadows, and those shadows block the light from reaching you, not the light of the sun, the light of blessing, the light of opportunity, the light of divine favor. But when you practice blessing, when you actively generate thoughts of goodwill and trust, you create forms of light. And those forms attract more light. This is not mysticism for the sake of mysticism. This is practical. This is mechanical. This is law. So here's what I want you to do. Tonight, before you sleep, sit in a quiet place. Take a piece of paper and write down the name of one person whose success or happiness causes you even the slightest discomfort. Be honest. No one will see this but you. Then write a blessing for them. Make it specific. Make it generous. May their health improve. May their relationships deepen. May their work be recognized. May their struggles ease. And then beneath that, write a blessing for yourself. Not a desperate plea. A statement of trust. I trust that what is meant for me will find me. I trust that I am exactly where I need to be. I trust that the Creator sees me and has not forgotten me. Fold the paper. Place it somewhere. You will see it every morning. And for the next 30 days, read those blessings out loud. Every single morning. Do not skip a day. And watch what happens. Not just in your circumstances, in your soul. Because that is where the real transformation occurs. And once your soul shifts, everything else follows. I'm not promising you that money will fall from the sky. I am not telling you that your problems will vanish overnight. What I'm telling you is that you will become a different person. A person who is no longer at war with reality. A person who has learned to work with the current instead of against it. A person who understands that resentment is a luxury you cannot afford. And when you become that person, the world responds differently to you, not because the world changed, because you did. This is the ancient path. This is the hidden wisdom, and it is available to you right now, not someday, not when you are more spiritual or more disciplined or more deserving. Right now, exactly as you are, with all your flaws and fears and doubts, you can begin. And if you truly commit to this practice, I promise you this: 1 year from now, you will look back and barely recognize the person you are today. Not because you will have more, but because you will have become more. And that is the only wealth that lasts.